Hello! Today I'm going to do my fourth week card for the Easter Blossom set, and I'm going to use the egg and the Happy Easter sentiment. I'm also going to use the note cards, so I don't know how many of you have ordered this before, but note cards enable you to do a quick card, not too much cutting. So the card's already cut out, it's actually already scored, it has matching envelopes, so you can just grab them in your bin, pull them out, and start working. So it kind of speeds up your cards. And today's cards are clean and simple, so I wanted to use those. So I laid my card down onto the grid of my desk, and I had set up the Stamp-a-ma-jig to have both stamps already pre-aligned. And you just put the plastic into the corner of the Stamp-a-ma-jig and stamp straight up and down. And that's how you prepare that plastic for use. I find with clean and simple, the Stamp-a-ma-jig comes in very handy because there's less embellishments, so you really need to pay attention to where you're putting things down. In this case, I just want to make a line of the eggs, and so I'm using my Stamp-a-ma-jig to help me kind of make each egg a little funky. So I actually ended up, I didn't like that some of my eggs were really too straight. They were too consistent. What I would have liked in this scenario is those eggs to be tilted in a really funky way so that all the eggs looked different in the way they laid down, except the bottom of them were aligned. And so I am looking at my grid to see where the bottom of the egg is, but I'm not trying to make them all stand up the same way. I'd like one to be tilted a little bit to the left, another one to be tilted a little bit to the right. So kind of a funky line of eggs kind of bouncing around on this line. And I'm actually using a gradient of colors so that as I go across, the egg is getting a little bit darker. And you'll see that I think the fourth egg, I decided to use Tangerine Tango because these are all shades of yellow and peach and orange. So this particular egg right here is going to be the darkest egg, so it's going to stand out, and that's Tangerine Tango. And that egg, I didn't want it at the beginning or the end or the middle, so it's kind of close to the end. And then I actually go back a step on my gradient to the color previous to that. And that actually does make that fourth egg my focal point. And you'll see later what I do with that fourth egg. So now that I've got my line of funky eggs, and again, I wasn't happy that, I don't think I made them funky enough. They should have been more tilted separate from each other. But anyway, I'm going to lay down a piece of tacky tape here, and this is because I'm going to ground these eggs on a ribbon. But you'll see there's a mistake right there, guys. I dropped the tape. Now, as you all know, tacky tape is not forgiving. You can't pick it back up. So I just said, okay, fine. I cut off the extra on the end, and I moved on. I took the protective cover off, and I moved on. So I picked up a piece, and I didn't have Tangerine Tango. I had Peach Parfait, but that was fine. It worked with those colors. And I just tied a knot in the ribbon, and then I let the ribbon lay on that tacky tape. So that the ribbon is being held to the card by means of the tacky tape. And in this case, it didn't need to go all the way to the end, so it was kind of okay I made that mistake. Again, in hindsight, I probably would have turned this ribbon over because you can see the knot wants to go up, and I really wished it would go down. But it turned out okay. And so I cut off the extra on the other end so that there's nothing to wrap around. And basically that is it for the top of that card. Now I'm going to stamp the sentiment on the bottom. And I decided kind of at the last minute I should keep going with the Stamp-a-ma-jig since I already had that available. So I picked up my plastic and I used my Stamp-a-ma-jig to help me align the sentiment as well. Again, I find that with clean and simple cards, because there's less to cover up, the Stamp-a-ma-jig can save you from having to do a lot of, retakes. And retakes can get expensive. So that's that card. Then the next thing I do is I grab a piece of our watercolor paper. You know that we sell it already pre-cut in Stampin' Up. So a sheet of watercolor paper like this is perfect to use for a focal point. Someone had asked me, why don't you ever do anything in the middle of the cards? So this one is where the sentiment and everything is in the middle of the card. And what I did was I pre-wet my watercolor paper just so that when I stamp down, I'll get a really nice watercolor effect. So I stamp it down, hold it down for a second or two because that's textured paper. And then I got a beautiful egg, and you'll see at the pictures in the end, you'll see better how these look. And then I have to let it dry. You can't like keep stamping on top of wet things. So I wanted to let that dry, so I just kind of grabbed a glitter pen and kind of did some glittering around my egg so that it would sparkle. So then after I had my egg sparkled and I waited long enough for it to dry, now I was ready to put the sentiment on it. And again, the Stamp-a-ma-jig came in really handy. It lets me kind of test, okay, where would the sentiment actually look best? And then I can stamp it down. And I allowed the sentiment to overlap the egg in the center of this focal piece. And so I was happy with that. I plan to add an embellishment, one further embellishment, but right now I've decided to go ahead and start mounting. So I had a piece of peach parfait paper and a piece of early espresso cardstock, and I just mount the early espresso onto the peach parfait, and then I mount the watercolor paper onto that. Again, the reason I use the watercolor paper is because I really wanted some more texture on this card. Being so clean and simple, I was looking for a little bit more texture. The watercolor paper gives you a luxurious texture on the front of your card. So I don't always do it, but occasionally I'll do that. So here I am mounting the, and I noticed there's some bleed through the watercolor paper, but that's fine. Nobody sees the back of it, so that's fine. And then I put that on my early espresso so that it has a 1/8 of an inch margin all the way around. So it's a very gentle border that basically ties into the early espresso in the sentiment that I stamped down, the Happy Easter. Now I'm taking these wonderful pearls that Stampin' Up! Now has, and they even have a really tiny pearl that I enjoy using as a last minute embellishment. It's very delicate and elegant, tiny, and so it's not obtrusive in any way. So I thought it would be a good place to the center of that flower on that egg, and I was happy. So the two cards that we did today were both really quick. This is an 8-minute video, and you can see how quickly you can put together a clean and simple card.